There is nothing more that I would like than to be able to sit here and tell you that life would always feel good, that you would just nonstop be living on these highs, these mountaintop moments, and that you'd never make any mistakes in life. But the reality of the situation is that's just not true. We know that life can be messy. We know that there's a lot of gray areas, and we're constantly just trying to figure things out and do the best that we can. And let's be honest, we know sometimes that we just do the wrong thing. We make mistakes. So that leads us to the question, what is it that we're supposed to do when we feel like we've drifted or we've strayed and we just feel like God's a long ways away? Well, stick around because that's exactly what we're going to talk about on today's episode. I'm Steve, the lead pastor at Everrise Church, and you're watching Rising. It's our weekly running devotional series where we talk about things going on in the culture, we talk about the Bible, and how we can apply it to our everyday lives. Stay tuned. All right, thanks for sticking around. So, like I briefly alluded to during the intro, we know that life can be messy. We know that things don't always go according to plan. We know that we get distracted. There's a lot of chaos, a lot of things happening around us, and just navigating that and trying to just work through all the different situations that life throws at us. Sometimes we make mistakes. Sometimes we veer off the path and we feel like God can be pretty distant in our lives. So today, that's what we're going to deal with. We are asking ourselves the question, and we're just going to kind of walk through this and talk through what are we supposed to do when we feel like we're far from God. Well, if you know me, by now you know that I don't sugarcoat a lot of things. I jump straight into it. I like to clear the air. I like to put it all out there so we can just deal with things and address things. And so I don't do this to be harsh or aggressive, but sometimes we like to tiptoe around things just because it makes us uncomfortable or we don't like to admit it. But typically, or not typically, but every time that we feel like we have strayed or that we've gone far from God, let's just go ahead and get this straight right now, clear the air, and just lay it all out there. It's not because God has left our presence, it's because we've left His. You see, God's desire is for us. He desires us, He pursues us, He wants a relationship with us, and He wants us to have a relationship with Him. And so when we're experiencing these times where we feel like we feel far from God, it's not because He's walked away from us or He's turned His back on us. It's quite the opposite. You see, in Hebrews chapter 13, verse 5, it's quoting from the book of Deuteronomy here, but it says that God will never leave us or forsake us. And that is not just some empty hope or wish. That is a promise. God does not leave us. He does not forsake us, no matter what. So when we feel like we're far from God, it's not because He's walked far away from us. It's because we've strayed far away from Him. And look, I know there's a lot of different reasons, a lot of different things that can cause us to get to that point, to get to this part in life where we just feel like we're far from God. And I'll be honest with you, most of the time, it just happens slowly over time. You see, sometimes there might be something that happens in our lives or to somebody around us that we're really close with or that we care about. And it can happen abruptly and it can happen quick. And we can get mad with God. We can get frustrated. We can feel hurt. And then because of whatever happened or what we feel that was wronged, or what we feel that God has done to wrong us, we get mad and we get angry, and we're just like, you know what? I'm done. I'm done with you. I'm not doing this anymore. And so sometimes we can get there pretty quick, but most of the time, I think for most people, I know this is true for my life, but most of the time when I feel like I'm far from God, uh, it's taken a while to get there. It's not something that just happened overnight, right? Because like I already mentioned, we know there's a lot of gray areas in life, and we're constantly living in this tension between the world and our flesh and worldly desires, and God and His Word and what we know He wants for us, and these spiritual godly desires, right? We constantly live in this tension. And you throw on top the fact that there are so many different things going on around us all the time. There are so many distractions, so many things competing for our attention. And look, not all of them are bad, but there are a lot of things that we could be doing with our time. There's a lot of things that we can choose to focus on. And with all of that around us, it can be easy sometimes to take our eyes off of God. We lose sight of God, our vision shifts, and we're no longer focused on Him. We're looking at the things going on around us. We're looking at our culture. We're looking at the circumstances. We're looking at our family life, our home life, vehicles, things to do for fun, social media, anything online, right? There's a lot of things that when we take our eyes off of God, we can begin gazing and getting focused on all of these other things. And just with that, through the chaos and the busyness of this world and this life, then what ends up happening a lot of the times is we slowly just start to drift. We start to walk away, and most of the time we don't even realize it until all of a sudden we have a moment of clarity. We look up and we're no longer in a place that looks or feels familiar to us, right? We look up and it's just like, whoa, what happened? How did I go from there to now here in this moment, right? And so I don't know. Maybe that's not you guys. Maybe that's just me. But there are certainly times in my life, for one reason or another, or a lot of different various reasons, where I feel like I have drifted, and I feel like I have strayed from God, and it does feel like God is far from me. And let me just encourage you, we are not the only people to ever feel this, or to think through this, or have to deal with this. This has been happening for quite literally thousands of years. You see, Jesus was well aware of this tension. He knew what people were going through and what they would be feeling, and he knew the reality of the fact that there will be times in life where we do feel like we are far from God. And so Jesus takes some time, and we see this in the book of Luke, chapter 15, where he shares three little stories, three parables that just highlight the nature of us being far away from God, but then God seeking us out and coming to our rescue. So I'm not going to read through every verse. I'm just going to kind of recap the stories here, but I would highly encourage you, read Luke chapter 15. Either pause the video right now, read through it, or read through it right after. But it's very encouraging, and it shows us God's heart towards us, even when we have drifted and we have strayed away from Him. So in Luke chapter 15, the first short story is the story of the lost sheep. It's a very familiar story, very famous. There's songs written about it, right? Where Jesus leaves the 99 and goes after the one. Because in this story, Jesus is talking to a group of people, and he's like, look, if you guys had 100 sheep and one of them went missing, who would not leave the 99 who are there and safe to go look for and seek the one that was lost to try to save it, right? And so we see God's heart in this, that He desires to seek out the people that have strayed and have drifted away from the herd, so to speak, right? It's God's desire to come find us and to save us and to bring us back into the fold. We see another story there about a lost coin. And it talks about this woman had a coin, she lost it, and so she ends up basically tearing her house apart. She cleaning it from top to bottom, sweeping it, doing everything that she possibly can to try to find this coin because it is valuable. It is important for her, right? And it shows the lengths that she goes through to rediscover and find this coin that she had, but that she had misplaced. And the point of that is not that God loses us. It's not that God doesn't know where we are, but it's to show us the value that we have in his sight, in his eyes, that we are something precious. We are something of great worth to God, right? And so he will go through great lengths to pursue us and to bring us back. And then the third story that Jesus shares, the third parable in Luke chapter 15, that just kind of highlights God's nature towards us as we have drifted, is the parable of the lost son, the prodigal son, right? And so if you're familiar with that story, you know that there was a son who was growing up, got a little bit too big for his britches. He severely disrespected his dad and basically was like, look, I wish you were dead. I want all of the inheritance that I am owed as your son. I want it now. I don't want to wait for you to have to die. And then I'm just going to go live my life. And so the father gives him his inheritance. The son goes off to a distant land, right? I don't know. In our culture, I just think about somebody like going to Vegas, something like that, right? And he squanders his entire inheritance. He literally, quite literally, loses everything. And I'm sure there were a few days, maybe a few weeks there, where he felt like he was living like a king. He was drinking, he was eating meals, he was just living it to the best of his abilities. And then we know that he eventually loses everything. And he finds himself basically at rock bottom, where he is working for a guy serving his pigs, which, if you were a Jew, pigs were an unclean animal, and you would never be caught dead around a pig. But here's this young Jewish boy who is now working for this guy, feeding his pigs, and he sees the food, the nasty slop that these pigs are eating, and he wants it because he doesn't even have something like that he can eat and enjoy. And so eventually he comes to his senses and he's like, look, I'll just go back home. I'll work as a slave for my father because I'm not worthy to be called his son anymore. There's no way he's going to forgive me for everything that I did. But I know if I can at least be a slave in my father's house, that I'll be better taken care of than I am now. And so we know that he goes back home. And while he's still a long ways away, the father sees him, and the father goes running to him. And before the boy even has an opportunity to say anything or to apologize, the father just embraces him and hugs him, and he rejoices because his son has finally come back home. And they throw the best robe on him. His father tells his servants to go get the best calf. They slaughter the calf, and then they throw just an absolute celebration because the son that was once lost was now home, and he was found, and he was safe where he was supposed to be. And when we look at all three of these stories, it shows us really where God's heart is for those who have strayed off the path, for those that have turned their back on God or that have gone away or just slowly drifted away, right? It shows us that God does not stop loving us. He does not stop loving those who turn their back on him, who walk away from him. As a matter of fact, not only does he not stop loving them, but he doesn't stop pursuing them. Just like with the sheep, he'll leave the others that are safe, that he knows are protected, and he will go and he will hunt down the one that is lost so he can bring it back. Like the coin, like I mentioned, it shows how valuable we are in his sight. And just like the prodigal son that returns home, it shows that all God desires for us is to finally get to that moment where we have that moment of clarity and we're just like, God, I'm sorry. I need you in my life. You see, that's God's heart towards anybody who feels like that they're far away from God. But here's the deal. Like I said at the beginning, when we feel like God is far away, it's not because he's walked away from us. It's because we've stepped away from him. But when we finally have that moment where we've got a clear head, we're thinking rightly, and we come to our senses, and it's just like, God, I'm sorry. I don't know even how I got here or what to do. It's in that moment where all you have to do is just turn around. You just turn back to God, because here's the beautiful thing. God is constantly drawing us back to him. And even though we've been walking away from him, he has been pursuing us the whole time. So it might feel like we're far away from God, but in reality, we're not, because God is right there. Because God does not leave us. He does not forsake us. His presence is always with us and around us and within us. And so when we have these moments of clarity and we finally realize, oh, God, I'm not where I need to be. I'm not where I want to be. I've not been doing the things that I should be doing. It's in those moments where all we have to do is just turn around, and God is right there. The Father is right there, arms wide open, ready to embrace us. Not to chastise us, not to punish us or ridicule us or just make a mockery out of us or make us an example, but to love us. And don't hear what I'm not saying. I'm not saying that we're not disciplined sometimes. And I'm not saying that there are not consequences to our actions. We all know that there are. But no matter where we are or what we've done or how far we feel like we've gotten from God, when we are finally ready to turn back to him, he is right there, arms wide open, ready to accept us and ready to love us. And that is the beautiful thing about God's love for us, as he desires us and as he pursues us. And in James chapter 4, verse 8, let me just read it real quick. It says, draw near to God, and he will draw near to you. Again, that is another promise that we see in Scripture. It doesn't say, for those who have not gone too far away, if you draw near to God, he'll draw near to you. No, it says, draw near to God, and he will draw near to you. No matter where you are, no matter what situation or circumstance you find yourself in, no matter what you've done, if you draw near to God, he will draw near to you. So, for everybody that does feel like that they're far away from God right now, I hope that this is an encouragement to you. And to you, I would just say, just stop. Just stop running. Just look up, turn around, and look back to the God who loves you more than anything else in this world. Look back to the God who has never stopped following you, never stopped pursuing you, and whose heart is to bring you back in to be a part of his family so that he can provide for you, he can care for you, he can protect you, and he can love you. Because that's really where his heart is. That's his desire. So, it doesn't matter where you are, where you've been, what you've done. God's desire and his heart is for you. And he is calling you to come back to him. And that goes to everyone. So, like I said, I hope that this was an encouragement. I hope that this is something that God will use to speak to some people and put it on their hearts, and just let this be that moment of clarity for you, maybe, where you're just like, you know what? Yeah, I'm not where I want to be. I'm not where I should be. And instead of just being drowned in the guilt and the shame and maybe the embarrassment that we might feel because of the situation that we're in or some of the things that were done, instead of just sitting in that, why don't we all just turn back to the one who's right there with his arms wide open, just ready to love us and ready to accept us. So y'all, I thank y'all for tuning in. I thank y'all for watching. I thank y'all for supporting this channel. You don't know how much it means to us. And we do this not because we want to get a lot of views and not because we want to build ourselves or build our channel up, but honestly, we do just want to minister. And it is our hope and prayer at Everrise Church that God uses these devotions, that he uses these little mini messages to just minister to people and to speak to their hearts. And so we truly hope that this has been beneficial for you and that God has spoken to you through this. So until next time, take care. God bless.